Many people know of her feats and accomplishments, and yet despite them, they choose to downplay her, offering her titles such as the weakest Hashira or a fraud. And today I'm here to dispel those rumors. Today we'll be talking about Shinobu and going over the feats and accomplishments which she has had within the series to detail how strong she is. And then, I'll be going over some of the very bad reputations which have been levied against her, to downplay her overall combat ability, and explaining in detail why they fail. As always, if you like this sort of content, please remember to like and subscribe, and with that being said, let's begin the video. To begin with, the main fight people will bring up when they speak of Shinobu is how she performed against Doma. Many people think that Doma was holding back, while others believe that Shinobu is simply on par with Doma. Before we discuss the Doma fight, we must first discuss the narrative which is surrounding Shinobu and her character, which plays an important role in discussing her scaling. Shinobu is a character who was born with an extremely high thrusting strength, yet she was incapable of cutting off the heads of demons, and because of that, everyone within her life underestimated her, with even her own sister telling her to quit being a demon slayer because of it. And this fact in totality explains the tragedy of Shinobu's character, because while she may excel in speed and thrusting strength, these are things which are only useful at killing demons, the very entities who she wishes to protect, and they are not useful at killing demons, which are the entities who have gained the full force of her rage. And it is that fact which causes her to be a tragic character. This is to say that Shinobu's thrusting strength and speed do not lag behind any Hashira, and in fact are superior to a lot of them, with Doma speculating that she may have been the fastest Hashira he's ever met. But regardless, as a combatant who is designed to fight against demons, it's quite useless. That said, this narrative plays a key role in her fight against Doma, because throughout the fight, we have numerous statements from Doma saying that if Shinobu had been capable of cutting off his head, she would have won. Every single time we see Doma ever mock Shinobu, it is quite blatantly because of her fundamental incapability to do the one thing which can seriously harm him, which is something he points out at the very beginning of the fight. In my opinion, it isn't a matter of Doma simply holding back his physical capabilities for some arbitrary and unknown reason, because we see him actively state that he could not block Shinobu's attacks, and that her speed is fast enough to kill him, which is something which obviously wouldn't be true if Doma could simply just use his Blood Demon Art and shut down her speed, or if he was simply physically capable enough to evade all of her attacks. Instead, Doma is not using the full extent of his Blood Demon Art because he doesn't need to. Fundamentally, Shinobu does not present much of a threat to Doma's life. Because of that, he doesn't need to do more than the bare minimum in order to defeat her. His fighting style also is an extremely good matchup against Shinobu, because the more he fights, the better he gets at predicting your movement, which allow him to defeat Shinobu without needing to use more of his Blood Demon Art than he needs to. In the anime, we get direct statements displaying this perfectly. After Doma's initial attack caught Shinobu off guard, his eyes slowly but surely began to degrade her lungs, and he even comments himself that she was getting slower because of this. And yet, even after he comments this, she is still capable of not only reacting to multiple of his attacks, but also damaging him through moving so fast he can parry them, and using his speed against them. However, that too ultimately doesn't matter in the face of Doma's regenerative ability. Once more, I would like to note that the key theme of Shinobu's character is repeated here. Shinobu is superior in all of the aspects which would regularly allow her to dispatch any human. She is faster than him, and more skilled enough to the extent where she is capable of landing multiple fatal blows without taking many hits herself. And yet, this advantage becomes useless because the opponent she is facing is not a human. So it's quite obvious that Shinobu should, at the bare minimum, at least be as skilled, if not slightly more skilled than Doma in close quarters, considering she lands far more attacks than him every single exchange they get into, and she also takes far fewer hits than he does. And at her peak, she should also be far faster than him, to the extent of being capable of one-shotting Doma if he preserved all of his physical capabilities yet lacked the regeneration which was granted to demons. Nearing the end of the fight, we see Shinobu get her infamous Resolve Vamp. We witness a feat that far surpasses anything she's actually shown before. Through regaining her resolve, we see she's capable of moving so fast that she shatters the bridge beneath her, which is something that Doma, given all of his amazing speed and superior weight, was incapable of accomplishing throughout the entire course of the battle that he had with Shinobu. But also Kanae and Inosuke, neither of them are capable of rupturing the ground beneath them in such a violent manner. In addition to this, by using her speed and skill, she's capable of throwing off the thing which Doma has been using to keep up with her speed thus far, being his predictive ability granted by his visual acuity, by moving in a manner which was difficult to predict, then immediately stabbing him through the neck, moving with such force that she quite blatantly pushed herself off the ground to the ceiling while carrying an 80-kilogram man using just the thrusting strength of her sword, which is something that I don't see many people talk about. During this instance, it's quite obvious that Shinobu is faster than Doma. If it wasn't before, so I don't really understand why people are trying to argue that these people don't really scale to each other in terms of combative ability, or at least speed. So with that being said, before we conclude on how strong Shinobu is in terms of her overall combat ability, there are a few claims which are used to downscale Shinobu in terms of combat ability, which cannot be allowed to go unresponded to. Firstly, the claim that Doma was simply toying with Shinobu is a misrepresentation of what people who think Shinobu is strong actually are arguing when they use this fight as evidence. While it is true that Doma is holding back, this applies only to his blood demon art. Upon realizing that Shinobu could not cut off his head, Doma could have simply flooded the entire area with ice and frozen her to death, not allowing her to get any more feats. But the key fact that must be remembered is that the only time he gets an opportunity to do so is after Shinobu has already outsped him horribly and stabbed him through the skull. Shinobu is still faster, and nothing in the fight contradicts this. However, Doma can still toy with her, because the key weakness which underpins her entire narrative is her inability to actually kill him, which allows him to basically play around with her without needing to worry about her speed. And the second claim is that Doma was capable of speed blitzing Shinobu, which is wildly inconsistent with the course of events, but when we look at the actual engagement, it's quite obviously false. In that scene, Shinobu lands 6 attacks on Doma, and Doma is only capable of landing 1 in response, so the most you can argue for here is a trade in blows. And I'm certain that the immediate response is that Shinobu is surprised, and therefore it's a speed blitz. However, that's massively inconsistent. Throughout the fight, Shinobu, while knowing she was getting slower due to the ice, still has had no trouble with evading Doma's attacks thus far. However, now she has finally been hit in a significant manner for the first time in the entire fight, something which she has not expected because she quite literally just hit the guy 6 different times. So if it isn't obvious enough, it's just quite blatant that Shinobu isn't surprised because she couldn't see the attack, but she's surprised that Doma was capable of landing that attack within the interval which she landed 6 attacks on him. So it's just a trade in blows where she's surprised that her opponent was actually capable of keeping up with her speed. And even then, the only reason why he was capable of keeping up was because Shinobu was already getting slower. And this fact is also supported by the delayed burst in blood, which is further to increase the surprise which the readers can feel, or the fact that he was actually capable of landing a hit in that exchange. And finally, we have the people who genuinely think that Kanao is on the level of Shinobu, and this is due to a particular statement from Doma, which says that Kanao might be more capable than Shinobu, and many people take this to the ends of the earth to try and argue that Kanao is comparable to Shinobu. However, contextually, this statement isn't referring to things like physical abilities, sword skill, or anything like that. Instead, it's referring to Kanao's fighting competence. Where Shinobu was incapable of instantly responding to the ice and knowing to hold her breath, Kanao was capable of doing so in extremely limited time with limited knowledge as well, and also being capable of fighting just fine without it. And this is something which Shinobu was incapable of doing, so at least in this facet alone, Kanao is vastly more competent than Shinobu. However, this isn't really something you can apply to power scaling, because even if Kanao was massively slower than Shinobu and would get speed blitzed and one shot by Shinobu if they fought, this statement would still be true, so it isn't really any contradiction to people who think that Shinobu is stronger. So to conclude, Shinobu is one of the most powerful characters within the Hashira, and I will say with absolute confidence that if Doma or any demon ranked below him were to keep their same physical abilities and their blood demon art, however they did not have the regeneration, they would die in extremely short time against Shinobu due to her massively superior speed. And the same would also be true for people like Rengoku, who was keeping up with Akaza. However, obviously Akaza is slower than Doma, considering he thinks that he can easily dodge him, or people like Mitsuri, who is getting kept up with by Upper Moon 4. People around that level, anyone who is slower than Doma would immediately be blitzed and one shot by Shinobu, and I'm fine with arguing with anyone about this. And I think that people genuinely thinking that Shinobu is a weak character just comes from their incapability of actually analyzing the sort of narrative which has been built around her fighting capabilities. And yet, even though this is true, such a situation will never occur within the canon, because obviously demons still do have their regeneration. So Shinobu is essentially stuck in a verse with extremely horrible type matchups for her. In terms of the Hashira ranking, I think she's comfortably stronger than people like Mark Muichiro, Rengoku, Mitsuri, and Tengen. Especially Tengen even. But with that said, if you like these sorts of videos, please remember to like and subscribe. This has been Shinra, and I'm out.